Hello, hello. Today we're talking to Stu Hirst, who is the cloud security principal or principal cloud security person in Just Eat, which is a UK-based food delivery system. They're across Canada as well. We go into things like what is cloud security in a multi-cloud context, and we also go to talk about how he does security across multi-cloud in a big organization, in a big internet company. We also talk about how recruiting is hard in cloud security, especially because senior and junior have a very different kind of expectation from a role. So I hope you enjoy the episode. If you do, hit the like and subscribe button so I can produce more content like this, or hit a comment and tell me what you thought or what was your big takeaway from the video. All right, let's get into the video. Hello everyone, welcome to Cloud Security Podcast. Today's guest is Stu Hirst, and it gives me immense pleasure to welcome him to the show because I have a lot of offline interaction with him, online interaction with him. So I have been really looking forward to this episode. Welcome, Stu. Glad to have you on the episode.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Great to speak to you and to be on.
Oh, awesome. Well, for people who don't know you and don't really follow you on Twitter and don't really get your jokes on Twitter, how do you explain what you do and how do you got into cybersecurity?
Yeah, so I've been in 2020. So I've been in about 9 years. I've been in IT over 20. Was a mainframe developer for the main bulk of the start of my career. And then I've mentioned this on a few kind of podcasts. I joined a company called the Train Line in the UK, and sort of morphed into doing PCI related work. Which just got me into the whole cyber security world, or whatever terminology you want to use for what we do. Um, and then just a number of years really upskilling in that area. And I've been lucky enough to be at a few awesome companies over the last few years. And really just kind of learning as we go, and trying to build teams at cool companies. I've morphed into this cloud world of late, which the last company I was at, I kind of made a deliberate decision to sort of shift into that because it needed looked at and needed dealt with. And then I'm now at Just Eat, which is one of Europe's biggest kind of food delivery and online ordering services, and heading up cloud security there with a really, really cool team split over the UK and Canada. And just really getting my teeth into all things cloud security, which is still very new, very niche. Lots to get stuck into, and it's really exciting. So that's kind of where I'm at, and a lot of those things have been through no rhyme or reason as to how I've got into those. I would say my transition into security was probably luck more than judgment. I mean, I'm super glad that I did because I love it and I'm very passionate about it. But I didn't pursue that career. I didn't pursue going into that part of technology. I just sort of found myself there.
Right.
And I'm still here.
well, I'm glad we are here because I really get along with you, at least from the first few conversations I've had with you. So I'm glad I've got someone as you in the cloud security space. And what a podcast to be on to talk about cloud security, right? Cloud security podcast.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And probably the obvious question that I guess people would, and I ask this every time as well, what is cloud security for you? Like, what does that mean for you?
Yeah, I think there's a number of different facets to it, really. The role I'm certainly in personally at the moment is heavily around the infrastructure of cloud. So the various cloud providers and how those infrastructures are built and secured. There's obviously other areas of cloud. You've got kind of SaaS products, which are, many of those are now cloud based, which you then consume as part of your business, so that there's a need to protect data and things within those. So I think it covers a number of different areas. It's still quite new for a lot of companies. I'm lucky. I work in the internet economy, and that's powered by the cloud. Really, I mean that if you're any reasonable internet company worth its salt, your applications are being built in the cloud. That's just sort of how it is. But I totally understand that for a lot of other businesses, bigger, more traditional machines or corporate businesses are either just starting to make that transition or maybe thinking about it. I'll be surprised if there aren't any businesses in this day and age that aren't in the cloud in some way, shape, or form. So whether that's just you know, consuming cloud applications, or whether they're actually starting to build in there. So yeah, I still think it's pretty niche. I think it's a subset of the security industry as well. I mean, a lot of the things that we've had to do with more traditional networks, we're now, I guess, replicating in the cloud, but having to do it a different way, just because of the way that the cloud is built. So yeah, that's kind of where I find myself, and that's I don't think there's a huge amount of people industry wide really invested in cloud security. It's a subsection of the rest of that security industry,
that's an
of
interesting
which
point.
is quite small anyway.
Yeah, that's an interesting one, because I do want to get into recruiting for cloud, especially because, to your point, it's cloud security is so new that a lot of people are still trying to figure out whether it's just infrastructure, or is it infrastructure and application. And the cloud service providers like AWS or Amazon, Azure, Google Cloud, everyone slaps the shared responsibility model as well. So it's almost like, and that gets even more complex when you talk about enterprise, whether it's an internet company or just your traditional banks or anyone else. Before we get into that, I wanted to ask, so you mentioned your focus is infrastructure, and application is an internet company as well. So you have people, your colleagues on application, or what other, I guess, security streams exist in Just Eat?
Yeah, so we've got, I suppose, a traditional setup, if that's what you want to call it. It's what I'd expect from any reasonable business, regardless of what you call the team name. So we have a security operations team dealing with incident response and alerting and threat hunting and things. And then we have an application security team. So all things code and how to build secure product. And then more traditional kind of awareness, risk, and compliance. You know, a sort of small function dealing with that. Even though, I mean, the work we do at this company is, you know, we don't do sort of death by PowerPoint or kind of
Thank God for
boring
that.
online training. Yeah, sort of boring online training platforms. The teams that are working in those areas are always looking for really cool things to work on.
Right.
I've seen different companies use different terms for these kind of teams. So, you know, SecOps is SecOps, but sometimes application security is called product security, depending on the kind of company. Cloud security sometimes gets merged or morphed into just an infrastructure security team or platform. Maybe I've seen used.
I think I was talking to one of the episodes that we covered in Cloud Security podcast. I spoke to the product security director of Dow Jones, and his role was kind of expanding between infrastructure application, but for all the products in Dow Jones. So there is that version as well, where someone may not have the title of cloud security, but technically they're looking after everything in a cloud context, because Dow Jones is primarily AWS. So, and talking about primarily AWS, are you guys multi-cloud or uni-cloud?
Yeah. No, we are, you know, fairly public about being multi-cloud for different reasons. I think that's a sensible approach for various reasons. The cloud providers, some of them are better at some things than others, which is, I don't want to sort of call that out or name that particularly, but you might find one does something a little bit better than another one, and that might be why you choose to use different ones. Obviously, resiliency considerations there to spread risk potentially. So yeah, no, we are multi-cloud, but a cloud-first company, I guess, is probably what you would describe it as. So
also, I guess, because a lot of companies, I guess, non-internet-based companies, banks and stuff, a lot of them in Australia, at least, have kind of going down that path where they're saying they're going to go SaaS first, then a PaaS, then IaaS. Is that a similar model for you guys as well?
Yeah, we've been in AWS for a reasonable amount of time. So everything we do is cloud first, really. I mean, it would be very unusual for us to be looking at anything that isn't cloud, unless there was a specific business reason to do that. And there are in lots of different companies as to why they would potentially want either their own data centers or physical kit within their own offices to do certain things. It just depends on the need of the business. I mean, I'm not in the world of banking or government where there's obviously data requirements and protections that need to be in place that perhaps make cloud more difficult. I think when I worked at Capital One for a short period of time, sadly a bit shorter than I was hoping, but
Was it
for a
around the
bank.
incident or before the incident?
No, this was a few years ago.
Well, I'm just checking.
Well, they're very interesting in that one of the best teams I've ever worked with, actually, and very proud to have worked there. And they are not fully in the cloud 100%, but certainly their American business had an expectation to be fully cloud over a period of time, and everything. Their cloud team is incredible, actually, and there's got some very clever people in it. And so for a bank of that size to be so close to being a fully cloud company is impressive, and I think that just shows how the world is moving and how tech is moving, and some of those traditional ways of thinking about securing networks has just shifted. And it's, as I said, I feel if you're a company that hasn't leveraged the cloud yet for a number of different reasons, I'd be keen to hear why that is, because the companies that I see that are really innovating and really flying and doing well seem to be
the only
cloud-based.
other example you hear of people who kind of moved into cloud then moved out of cloud these are big giants again. Dropbox is an example. Facebook was an example. These guys went on cloud, but then they realized the compute over there was not enough. But for average population of people using tech, I think cloud is a huge step from what the traditional data center has been. It's really, I think a friend of mine went to the US and he was saying they have a very different problem. And I don't know if this exists in UK or Scotland as well, but they were saying that they have problems with hundreds and thousands of accounts, like AWS accounts. Is this something that you see, like the scale of usage of public cloud? Do you see, like, either yourself or your colleagues in other companies, do you hear much about that in the UK where people are talking about like the scale of public cloud that they have to deal with in terms of environment?
Yeah, a little bit. I suppose to touch on the Dropbox point, they did a really good blog about their reasons for shifting some things out of Amazon into their own data center. I mean, I think the business reason for them was that they're storing such a huge amount of data that I think it was actually much cheaper for them to do it themselves than it was to have it in Amazon.
Or was the cost, not the compute?
I'm sure compute will be as part of that as well. The speed at which they could potentially get access to historic data, but there was a very specific set of business cases as to why they did that, and I don't think they're fully out of AWS. I think they still run applications in AWS from what that blog. I'd have to dig it out and have a look.
Well, they have the other problem. They want to be out of the cloud and into their data center, whereas everyone else is trying to get out of the data center and get into the cloud.
So, but again, every business is different and has its reasons for doing what it does. I think on the sort of environment scale, again, it depends where you're at. I mean, I watched a great talk recently from Chris Farris, which he was talking at reInvent. I think he's at the Warner Group or whatever that's called now, and I think that group is X amount of companies absorbed into that group. And I think on that talk, when he talks about how to use guard duty and do threat hunting, I think they've got over 800 accounts in AWS. So that to me is huge scale. And it's it's worth watching as a talk just to see how they've started to address threat intel across such a huge range of accounts.
Oh yeah, I'll definitely link that in the show notes. I think that's a good one. I think there was in the Slack channels as well. Well, I guess the Slack channels that you and I shared, it was definitely there as well. He's a solid dude. Definitely worth following on the research and the work he's doing. So, in terms of scale, if you're looking at, so what is your strategy for now? Because you're being multi-cloud, what are your thoughts around folks who are multi-cloud themselves? How do you deal with it, or how you're trying to deal with it if it's the onset of it? What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I would say the one. I mean, I'm upskilling in cloud every day, and I work with some really smart people who teach me lots of cool things. And I would say the one thing that I initially struggled with in in creating a team of of cloud security and how to address cloud security at a major business is, what do you go after first? What do you care about? You could have hundreds of accounts. Yeah, you could be split across numerous cloud providers for various reasons. You have conflicting priorities across all sorts of teams. There's such a myriad of things to care about. So I went back to basics a little bit, of risk. Not the. I keep saying this, but it's not the super sexy stuff, unfortunately, when it comes to some of the things we can do. But it was like, what should we care about across these environments and infrastructures? So, I don't reinvent the wheel with these things. There's a lot of good frameworks out there. I did an article recently that's out this week on, there's places you can go and get a lot of reasonable frameworks for cloud. So CIS benchmarking and NIST and the MITRE framework. It might not be a sort of one size fits all, but those kind of things should give you at least an understanding of where to start. So what I've fundamentally done at this company so far is built a risk framework that allows us to understand what it is we care about and why we should care about those things. And then any piece of work we now do essentially aligns to any of those risks, of which they're risk rated and reviewed constantly, really. So we're always able to justify why we're doing certain pieces of work over other pieces of work. The premise being it's reducing risk in certain areas that we know to be potentially more serious than something else.
Right.
So that's kind of where I started. I think the other thing that's super important when you either come into these kind of jobs or you're somebody starting in cloud security is you just need to understand the environment. And I don't just mean the cloud environments that you would be responsible for. The first 6 weeks in this job, I did nothing but speak to people.
Right.
Anybody and everybody, from engineering, finance, HR, whoever I could speak to, just to understand their world, their job, what applications they use, what data they're potentially using, just to get a feel for the things that go on. And I think that's important in security because we're not just siloed. We tend to consider things across a whole
Yeah.
business.
Talking about silos, how does a deployment pipeline look for you guys? At what point does security get involved? Is it the beginning, where suppose, I guess you can take it either as a new product being launched by Just Eat, or you can talk about existing products being updated, however you're going to take it.
Yeah.
How do you approach security in Just Eat for a new
Yeah.
product?
I mean, I guess I can't go into too much detail for
Of
obvious
course, yeah, I
reasons.
get that.
We're very into DevSecOps and everything being as far left as possible. To use the shift left terminology that we're probably all pretty bored of
So
now. But
I guess where I was going with that was around automation being the success or the key to success for cloud security in cloud.
Yep.
What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's obviously really key, isn't it, to much of what we're doing. Not just in cloud security, but I think security in general and engineering in general. So, we're always looking to automate processes and procedures as best we can. I think the way that the cloud is built and the functionality of the cloud providers makes it interesting to use automation in a way we haven't used before. We're really keen at the moment on exploring the whole auto remediation piece, especially in AWS. So somebody does something that is potentially risky, and you can auto remediate as soon as they've done that. So
Or like a Lambda function or something?
yeah, and you're effectively reversing their decision. So you can start small with these things. You can, a behavior is seen and you can alert on it. So maybe that's the first step. You automate your alerts so that you can see that something's happened. Maybe you go and carry out some kind of manual task to deal with that, or ignore it. It could be just an alert you're not going to do anything with. And then you excuse me, you go into more, can we take retrospective or very quick retrospective action on that that behavior or that thing.
Cool.
So we're sort of heavily looking as to where we can leverage a lot of those things with it, certainly within AWS, but also with the other cloud providers that we
All right.
that we use.
For people who are probably listening and I guess, are starting off in security in cloud, could be multi-cloud, Azure, AWS, or whichever one. What do you recommend as to what your point earlier? So use the first 6 weeks to find out what the company does, and that's kind of next up is SDLC, software development lifecycle. How do you recommend they approach security in cloud for a DevOps team or a pipeline-based company? Or
Yeah, I mean, it's fundamentally massively important for you to understand the environment. What accounts have you got? What applications do you have in the cloud? What's running where's your data? Where's your card data if that's what you do? Where's your personal data? What testing environments do you have? And then I suppose you've got to start looking into what protections you currently have in place. You've talked about the shared responsibility model. That's quite well established now, and it gives a good breakdown of what you should then look at, because the cloud providers deal with the other side. And I suppose you've just got to go and see where a lot of your protections are missing, and then use those risk frameworks that I've talked about to start to break down, okay, using these frameworks, are these things applicable to my business, and are they the main things I should be worrying about? You're not going to immediately jump into, if you're just starting out and you're just maybe just building a team in cloud security, or you're just starting to address it for the first time, it's unlikely that in 6 weeks you're going to be automating the hell out of things and using Lambda, and you're going to be starting with a lot of basics. You're going to be cleaning things up, firefighting some issues, reaching out to your engineering teams to help them understand some of the practices a little bit better, building some best practice or training programs. You're not going to be one of these super duper cloud engineering teams overnight. And I think you need to do a lot of those basics first before you can then strategize what you do next. It's like anything in tech. You sort of go through a journey. I suppose it's how quick you can get there. The more people you've got, the easier that becomes. And one of the talks I do on cloud is I tend to ask the crowd or the people watching, what do they feel is the most important thing in cloud security? And I get loads of great answers, S3 and public buckets and security groups or whatever it is. And I tend to say it's recruitment, because you can have all the great ideas in the world, but if you don't have the people who can help you achieve it, then those things don't happen. So I'm very lucky here that I've got some great engineers that we brought on board.
That's a good segue into recruitment as well. What do you recommend that people should have? And I believe you yourself had a challenge yourself recently when you were trying to grow your team. So love to hear, but what do you think is a decent sized team, and what kind of roles should they have?
So we had, I joined and there was only a couple of people in the team, but very talented people. Unfortunately left for other roles, and I was fundamentally faced with 2 open roles to fill across the UK and Canada. And cloud security is niche anyway, and in an industry like this, you tend to know who those people are. Generally it's the same names that sort of float around at more senior levels. So I was obviously doing a lot of digging around senior cloud security engineers and reached out to a few people I knew who were awesome. But it was hard. It was really hard work. We put a senior cloud security engineer job out onto the market and didn't have a huge amount of sort of contact. We had a few applications and a few interesting people to speak to, but it was slow, and it took a few weeks to really get much back. So I had discussions with our team internally here around what kind of thing are we looking for. I mean, senior people to help drive certain things, but then we also considered, well, how about bringing somebody more junior in, who's either transitioning from another security role, or maybe a network engineer role, or even somebody who's been in a pure engineering role. So I put a junior job spec out, and I had over 200 applications for that job.
Wow.
So we're talking a huge amount of people applied for that, which was just awesome. And it took weeks to go through all the CVs and and applications. And that was a bit of an eye opener. And lots of the people that I spoke to had a lot of experience, not necessarily in cloud all the time, but years of experience in network teams or in IT or in support. And then lots of people kind of coming out of university or looking for first roles in companies and that kind of thing. So it made me feel that potentially maybe we're putting the wrong kind of job specs out. Maybe we're looking for too many things. Maybe people just don't feel confident enough that they are senior, if that's what the term is. It just felt like more people applied for the junior role thinking, well, maybe I've got more chance of getting that than I have of the senior role, even though they were not junior, as I would kind of term it, i.e. kind of first jobs or
right.
Or kind of just out of university or new to the.
So did the
these
senior role
companies.
have both application and infrastructure in cloud, or was it, at your point earlier, it was just focused on infrastructure, but people just felt, well, I haven't worked in cloud long enough?
So the senior job spec wasn't too different from the junior one. It asked for a couple of different things, potentially things like Ansible or Terraform or cloud formation, but not in any real detail, not at a super technical level. But we also didn't demand that people needed all three of the main cloud providers. It was like, knowledge of one is probably enough because you can learn the other ones.
Of course.
I just wonder if the term senior and the connotations of the term senior from an experience point of view just put a lot of people off because they felt that either they didn't have it, or because they were trying to transition into more of a cloud role, that they just thought, well, I haven't been a senior cloud engineer, therefore I'm not going to apply for it. So that was just a real eye opener, and it's changed my thoughts on future hiring and how we go about doing that. So even if we put out a junior spec, but then we hire somebody, but then they come in at a bit of a higher level, that's totally fine. So yeah, really, really interesting experience. But we've had a couple of awesome people join.
So anyone looking at recruiting anyone, should they open, I guess, if they have one role for senior, they probably should look at doing a senior and a junior?
Well, I just think that, and I'm not the only person that talks about this, and my boss at Just Eat, Kevin, is very passionate about this as well. I just think we put too many things on job specs for security. I think we ask for too many things, and the reality is that very few people are experts in any of those things. So we should probably restrict job specs to bare minimums, and then if you get really awesome people who know a hell of a lot, then that's great. You've got what you wanted. But it also just opens up the pool to lots of people who either underestimate their value or their skill set, or they have imposter syndrome like me, and they don't feel that they've got the skills to do it. And so I think it's an industry thing. I don't just think it's cloud. I see some job specs for security roles, and I just think you're looking for, I don't know what you're looking for. You're looking for somebody who appears to not exist, because you're asking for almost experience in every facet of information security and real life experience of it, which it just isn't the case. People might have a little bit of knowledge about things, but the reality is they won't have been in jobs where they've been able to use that.
And on top of it, sorry, you finish.
Sorry, yeah, I was going to say that if these people do exist, they're I hate to use the term, but they're the sort of rock stars, that are probably on such massive salaries and very hard to employ anyway.
Are you talking about job descriptions where they ask for CISSP, experience with cloud, security architecture, security? You're like, wait, if I'm doing engineering, architecture, risk management, I'm clearly not one person. You're expecting way too much. Either this job is like $1 million job.
Yeah, or those jobs are sort of positioned at engineer level or mid-range level, and yet they seem to want the experience of a CISO or years and years of experience of driving this change at huge organizations. And I think we just need to be realistic in security. There's a massive amount of talent in the industry, and there's a lot coming through and a lot coming out of great universities or people transitioning in their careers. But we need to get those people into companies. And then give them the ability to upskill and to drive change. There's one person in my team. I don't like calling out specific people because I work with a really, really awesome team. But one of the people that I brought in had come from another UK internet company, and he was a pure platform engineer who had been working on some security stuff, but hadn't done a degree in security. He hadn't, been a prominent security team member, but was really interested in it and had done some work in it. And we interviewed him, and it was just a very easy decision. And he's come into the team, and within 3-4 months is just smashing it out of the park.
Right.
So it's almost like those people just need the opportunity. They've got such an amount of skill in certain areas, and yeah, they might be missing some of the security aspects, but we can teach that, and you get that by being in the job. So I think I've talked on a couple of podcasts around. I think people who hire security professionals need to be a little bit more realistic about what they're able to get, and also what they're able to get for the money, because you see some roles that are supremely underpaid for what it seems like they're asking for. If you want massively senior security people with a huge amount of skill set who've done it at big organizations, I'm afraid you have to pay for that. That's what the industry demands.
Course, yeah.
So similarly, if you're taking on junior people new to the industry, setting huge expectations of what you think they should know, it isn't the way to go. So for me personally, that the last few months have been a real learning curve on hiring and what to look for. And it was great to get such a huge amount of applications. I mean, I wish I could give everybody a job, but it's just not there. It's just not how it works.
What are your thoughts on having someone who, to your point, you hired someone who was a platform engineer, and then you gave him the skill set of thinking like a security person while doing the same thing he may have been doing as a platform engineer? Was that, I guess, obviously it depends on the right candidate as well, but what was in the job description? Like, did he apply for it? Was it through a referral? I'm just curious if the description, like for people who are listening and probably trying to recruit in this space, and they would be trying to say, look for that unicorn who does cloud engineering experience as well as security architecture experience. Should they be probably try and put it more so that it opens up, say, a platform engineer reading the job description, like, oh, actually, I think I'll do all of these. I may not do the security thing. Maybe I can apply for the junior role or something else. Like,
absolutely. And I think if you're willing to accept that you can bring people in and train them up or allow them to get that knowledge, that you might want to tweak your job specs to look for those kind of people. Let's look at what security does on the whole. I mean, yes, we cover whole businesses, but we're very aligned to engineering or development or whatever it is you want to call those teams. The people who actually build things and push out change. Now, you want people who are comfortable in those environments. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean coding, although that's valuable. It just means people who can speak that language at a certain level. Because honestly, the security side of things can be taught. There's plenty of great material out there and courses and videos, and the theory behind it. We've all had to upskill on that. So having people who are just comfortable in that world and can speak to engineers at their level and their language, that's half the battle, really, because they're the people you're trying to influence and change. And that's kind of what we look for. And in a company like Just Eat, I mean, it's such a massively culturally aware company where people have got the massive ability to come in and drive great work themselves, and it's very autonomous. So it demands a certain type of person to be who's comfortable doing that. So personally, when I've interviewed some people, it's less about technical ability, because that comes in time. It's as much about, is this person going to fit into the culture of what it is we're trying to do? That autonomy thing is very big in a lot of these kind of companies, and I know it is across other big brand names, where people come in and they're not told what to do on a day-to-day basis. And we're the same in the cloud team, the cloud security team. The people in my team they drive the work. They decide what path we're going down and how we get there. And I'm just somebody that tries to bring it together at a sort of different level. But these are the smart people who make the decisions and teach me. They know how to get these things done. So
it's surprising how many times that the smart people who make a decision like this also have a good reasoning behind it as well. So
or sometimes it's the wrong decision, but it's right to make it, and then you find out that, okay, perhaps that wasn't the right way to go. But and that's how we learn, and that's how we develop. And I think we've got good examples in our wider security team of an apprentice, and then some people at a university who've come in, and within 6 months they're making decisions, like really important decisions about how, what products we use, what technology we go after, or how to change certain things and improve certain things. And I think that's just incredible that a young point in your career, or in your security career, you're able to drive that kind of change, because I'm wary that it's not like that everywhere. So
Yeah.
I love these companies for that reason. I mean, it can be intimidating for somebody like me who's
I was gonna say.
nearly 40, but to see sort of 20-year-olds who are smashing it, just
So like,
so
what
much
was
more
I doing when I was
clever.
20? It's like,
Yeah.
why wasn't I making decisions when I was 20? I should have been leading a company.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's humbling, really, and it's great because I don't think there's a barrier on who you learn from
Oh
in a
no, I
business,
definitely not.
and
Yeah.
cloud's a very interesting space where um, I'm really not a super expert on a lot of it, and I've learned a lot over the last year or two in it, and really tried to invest a lot of time in learning. But it's from the people in the industry we both look to get that information, and to get
Yep.
an idea of what to look at.
Oh, sweet. Well, that's a good segue into our second segment, which is Mythbusters. And keeping the theme of mistake may have, or mistake, not really mistakes, but it's more around what are the myths that you see people have about cloud security. Like when you talk to other people, cloud security, what is that first thing that you feel is like a myth that we would like to bust?
Yeah, that it's not secure. um, I've done panels and workshops specifically on cloud security in rooms of people whose businesses are not so far along their cloud journey, and there is a bit of a recurring theme of, we're not in the cloud because it's insecure, because we lose control, we lose the ability to protect things. I sense that's because if you've got your own data centers, you've got a well-established set of controls, you know where everything is. I sense that if you're in that world and you're comfortable with it, and you've got repeatable processes, and it doesn't change that quickly, that's where your world is. I think if you're then thinking about cloud with all its ability to spin things up and close things down within seconds, and the containerization world and serverless world where it's all just a bit crazy and we're not really quite on top of it yet, that probably presents some concern, I think. So I do see that a bit, but I think it's because until you get into it, until you actually start trying to secure in the cloud, you're probably not aware of what's capable, of what you can do. We've talked about the shared responsibility model, and the companies who run those cloud platforms take care of a huge amount of things that you now no longer really have to deal with, hardware and some of the operating system security. The flip side is that it still allows us to make a hell of a lot of mistakes as engineering teams, or as people who build in the cloud. But I don't think that's any different from traditional
I was going to say,
networks.
It's not that, I mean, even these days, we still have, I think the way I've always looked at cloud is that back when everyone was a small company, people were in a dome or a garage somewhere, they were managing their own servers. This is way before cloud and everything, right? Then we moved on to data centers, which we were managing. Then we outsourced it. Even then, at that point, I'm pretty sure, I wasn't there for most of the time, but I'm pretty sure a lot of people would have still I don't have any control. So they would have been forced into that path where they had to make controls and processes, and they obviously would have made a mistake. I feel this is a similar transition. Now we're on that part where, data center was outsourced, but now it's outsourced completely. You just get access to a console on the internet, but you can still make the same controls. You can still have the same processes. It's not that you're losing control. It's just that I feel like people get lazy or just way too comfortable. And to your point earlier, it's like, this is the right thing to do. Because I know this, I don't know cloud, so I'm just gonna.
Or I think I come back to the risk term. I think people see it as, you're just going to introduce more risk at a time where we feel like we're on top of the risks that we've got, and that movement into cloud is maybe just going to introduce things that we're not quite ready for. I think the other thing that I always hear, and it's not really security, but people just assume that the cloud is super expensive, and it absolutely can be, depending on how you configure it and how you use it.
Yeah.
But if you're a company that's building product and you want to ship that product as quickly as possible and scale, it's far easier to do in the cloud than it is on traditional on-prem
100%.
or data centers.
As long as
And
you
and, and
architect
that
it
has
right.
shaped things. Yeah, that has moved things along. And I think when we look at the security aspect of that, we can scale at the same pace. We just have to find out how to do it
Yeah, that's right.
in a lot of areas.
Yeah.
We in Just Eat at the moment, we're definitely a lot of the processes that we're driving. We're trying to be as clever as we can with them, where they cover. They're scalable across any cloud platform. It doesn't really matter what the platform is or where in the infrastructure it is, or that there is a repeatable process, an automated process that can just be rolled out wherever we feel it needs to be rolled out. That's kind of a high level what we're trying to, rather than have individual processes, individual things that we have to build and maintain to fix certain problems.
Yeah.
We want something that, as best we can, sort of covers as much of those things as we can. That's very high level. I wish I could go into a bit more detail, but that's kind of our
So
strategic
I guess just
approach.
on that same vein, I guess, is the C-level concerned about cloud security, or do they take it seriously? Being an internet company, I assume the answer is yes, but
Yeah,
for anyone
absolutely. Yeah,
listening.
without a doubt. I mean, they're very security savvy anyway, not just cloud. It's one of the reasons I joined the organization. Is Kevin Fielder, my boss, had already built an awesome team here, doing the right things and lots of freedom to make decisions we think are the right decisions. I've come in and been able to build a team, and given the autonomy to do that. And yeah, I think I did an article recently where I said that I still feel like some companies, and we're not one of them, where the C-level isn't yet quite invested in security. And I just wonder how many more major hacks have to come out for those boards to understand that they probably need to invest a little bit more money, because it's every week, isn't it? And I actually think the cloud security side of things, we're seeing more and more incidents now than we obviously did maybe 2-3 years ago.
Yeah, even though Amazon and other people are trying really hard to make it really hard for making an S3 bucket public, somehow
Yeah,
people are
or
still making it open.
yeah, sometimes it's there's been a few more niche incidents that have happened as well, but we're just continuing to see major companies, not even major companies, but many companies hit by things for various reasons. But
Yeah, I think
if
breaches
I
become
was
almost like everyday news now.
yeah, you've got lots of companies getting it right as well. CISOs at more board level and being able to influence really at those levels, and certainly from a budgetary point of view, being able to get the money they need and the people they need. I think it's just an ongoing battle. But if companies underestimate the value in it, then they probably need to speak to some companies that have been hacked. And anytime one of these hacks comes out publicly, I always find it interesting how many job adverts go out in the weeks and months afterwards, because there's a change of direction at senior levels to say, well, hang on, no, we really have to do something about this now.
That's right.
We maybe didn't a year ago, and now we really
Yeah.
have to focus on it. So
I think
yeah,
the
that's always
funniest
interesting.
was I think Equifax, the one of the biggest ones. I met someone. I was at one of the AWS trainings, and I met someone from Equifax, and he joked about the same thing, that he got the job straight after the hack, because everyone's like, oh my god, we need to protect this, put
It's
everything on it,
probably
throw
not
more money at it.
it's probably not the worst time to join an organization, actually, because you'll get a huge amount of input from the right people, because they don't want that thing to happen again.
And everyone's invested.
Everyone's invested. It's probably the easiest time to ask for more money in people.
Yeah,
So
that's right.
it might not be the worst time to join companies. I think
Yeah.
there was a good article. I think it was about the Equifax hack, where I think one of their main security dudes had just talked about. I think he did an article for the BBC about just how difficult that all was, and how much pressure there was on the teams, and the PR response, and just what that whole world felt like. And I guess we can all empathize that they're very, very difficult roles to do. And I do genuinely feel concerned when the press goes after companies that have been hacked, because they don't really know what's going on behind closed doors, and
I think it's just
it could be any of us at any
sensitization, I
point
guess,
in
for them.
time.
Like,
Yeah, it's a nice story, isn't it, for the press? But there are real people behind these things, generally trying to do the best jobs they can with what they have available, and sometimes we don't get it right. So I just think, if the press have a role to play in helping companies, I think, and just sort of continually beating down security teams is probably not going to work long term to get companies to do the right thing.
But that also means there would always be people who would be employable as well, I guess. People would be like, oh, I want to do this from the blue team and not just be hacking it.
Yeah, I suppose it depends what it is. I mean, if it's negligent, then that's different. But if there's just so many things to consider now in security teams, and cloud is just one of those things where I'm personally always at a level of nervousness about, you can't cover everything. It's impossible to cover everything. It's impossible to say that everything is secure. It's just not doable. So you're always thinking, is that the right thing to do? Have I missed something here? Or you're making a decision to not do something. I've got 50 things I need to fix, and I can only fix 20 of them in this period of time. Therefore, I can't fix the other things. And do I need to do something? Do I need to find another way to get that done, or risk accept, or whatever it might be? And that's the battle at any level of security, regardless of seniority.
Yeah, that's an interesting one, because that made me think, because in Australia, we have this thing called mandatory data breach notification. Basically a mandate from the government to say, if you get breached, you need to notify the government in 48 hours.
Same, yeah.
Oh, right. I was going to ask, so is there a thing in UK as well?
We have the ICO, which is, I don't know the levels of data that you have to have lost, but you have to go to the ICO to say, there has been an incident, we believe this data has been compromised.
Right.
So the ICO are the department who look at, they'll end up doing the investigations as to why that happened, what was missed, was the company at fault, and then they can fundamentally fine organizations if they feel that they didn't protect well enough. So company, and that's obviously relating to GDPR as well, so it's far better regulated than I think it was 10 years ago, but I think there's still a hell of a lot of work to do.
And that's a good segue to my next question. If there is a breach that you may be part of, or you may have done it yourselves, but you don't want to claim it, or you may have heard of from your colleagues, is there a breach that you can share where I guess it could have been a win for Blue Team, or it was just learning that you came across?
I've certainly dealt with a lot of incidents in the companies that I've worked for. That's probably the best. I've never dealt with a breach, so touch
or
wood,
a security incident in the cloud, I guess.
I mean, I've certainly had incidents happen all the time of varying degrees. Sometimes they're alerts on things that are happening that you need to go and investigate. Sometimes it's external parties trying things, or bots, or
right. What is your thinking around things like bug crowd and stuff, where you know how they do almost crowd-funded, no, it's not crowd-funded, but basically crowdsourcing pen testing? What are your thoughts on that?
So I did, when I was at Skyscanner in 2015, we started a bug bounty with BugCrowd, and it's public now. It went public last year, I think.
Right.
So yeah, we were fairly new to the whole crowdsourced testing thing. It's much bigger now, and Just Eat leverages some of that capability.
From your experience, did you find it valuable?
Yeah, massively, actually. I think there's still a place for traditional pen testing. That's always going to have a place in businesses, but the crowdsource model, for me, had a huge amount of benefits, because you're getting more people testing your applications. It's very good for external facing applications, where you almost want a real world view of what might be happening, and then you get such a diverse set of skill sets across those crowdsourced testers that you find some interesting things. The gamification of it as well makes it interesting, because people have to work a little bit harder to find things, or it just when I've been running bug bounty schemes, I've found that the output that we get from them was more valuable than a pen test. There's value in the pen test, sure, and you find things and you fix things, but I remember rolling out that bug bounty at Skyscanner, and the first, I think we had a 2-week program, which was the private program, and we opened it up, and I think we had 100, if I can remember the figures, I think we had 149 bugs
Wow.
in those 2 weeks, which I would struggle to have got 149 bugs out of a 2-week pen test, maybe, but if it was maybe just one person or two people, and
Wow.
that was an eye opener. Not because the product was fundamentally insecure, it was
Yeah.
just that they were finding lots of things that we hadn't really considered. We tightened up on scope a lot after that because we sort of just went, okay, it's the Wild West, go
Oh.
crazy. And we
Yeah.
matured a lot in those couple of years around how to scope
Yeah.
a bug
Maturity
bounty.
is a very important point there, though, right? If you're not a mature security organization, it just could be basically opening the fire hose on security's face. Its security was not mature enough.
I suppose there's two schools of thought to that. I think you need to be at a point in time before you went to a bug bounty scheme. I don't think you would just start one of those before you had an established security team. But at the same time, it was very powerful to show engineering how many bugs were found, because I genuinely think they just didn't appreciate what external people were capable of doing. And the good thing about those platforms is you can force testers to show you videos of how they've exploited whatever it is they're doing, or how they found that bug. And we used that information to build internal workshops and little training courses around, like we did one on cross-site scripting, which
Right.
Here's how that thing happened, and here's the video, here's somebody actually showing you at fundamental code level what they've done. And I think now you even get to the point where testers can put in remediation steps and things that you should think about, and it gives a hell of a lot of information for engineers to go and upskill and fix it. It's not just about fixing things, it's about if you've got one type of bug that comes in quickly and regularly, you've got a problem with that type of thing in your engineering team. So you can go and not just fix those individual things, but you can say, well, okay, as a business, we are no longer willing to accept that we'll have any cross-site scripting in our code, and you can look at various ways to go and eliminate that.
Sweet. No, thank you. I just want to go quickly into our next section as well, which is kind of like almost goes into this, but it's called the unicorn segment. Basically, it's talking about things that you do which makes you a unicorn. It's kind of where I'm going with this, but we kind of spoke about the meetup that you have, the overarching cybersecurity stuff that you do. We would love for the audience to hear about it as well. I'm sure we would get some Scottish fans as well, and some people
Nice.
who might be moving into Scotland as well. So could you share a bit? Obviously, love to talk about music as well, which people who would watch the YouTube video would actually see the background, but maybe a bit about the cybersecurity work that you do outside of Just Eats for the community.
Yeah, sure. I don't know if unicorn's a great term. I don't feel that at all, but I definitely do some things outside my day job. I talk at events, and I started a meetup a few years ago that Scotland's got a great little cyber community, actually. I think we're ahead of lots of parts of the world on cybersecurity here. We've got some great startups and tech businesses in cyber. Some of the best people I've worked alongside live and work here, either in academia or in business or government. And we tend to all know each other, which is an interesting dynamic, and I think that's a good thing. So of late, myself and a friend of mine in the industry, Harry McLaren, started Cyber Scotland Connect, which is it's a way to try and bring a lot of the cyber communities in Scotland together. So there's lots of great stuff going on. There's the meetups that some of us are doing. OWASP, we've got a good great event up here. We've got some DEF CON events. We've got ISACA and lots of these bodies doing great events and evangelizing the industry. But what we tried to sort of bring together was, imagine if all these people had a way to talk to each other, a way to share information, Perhaps you're new to the industry here, or you've moved here and you're looking for information on how to attend an event or start something, or you just want information about what universities you could potentially apply to, or what companies are hiring at this point in time. Imagine just having that one-stop shop for all things cyber in Scotland. So that's what we created. We're there's myself and Harry that run it, but we've got 17 moderators, of which anybody can be a moderator. And those people sort of take care of certain parts of the industry and community that we've tried to build. So it's fairly unique. I can't think of, or haven't seen anything else on the planet where it's a community bringing together lots of communities in a sense. And we're quite lucky that Scotland's the right size for us to be able to do that. So that's what we do. We work with some other leading events in Scotland as well. A couple of the main expos and conferences. We run workshops at them and do panels and things.
That's pretty
so
awesome.
It's just like super exciting, and I'm really humbled to kind of work in cyber in Scotland, and I encourage anybody, if they're looking for a great part of the world, to come and study or progress a cyber career, that this is one of the best in the world. Honestly, I'm not just saying that. We have some of the best universities for ethical hacking, and a great and growing cyber community that is, because of our size, is able to kind of move things on a lot more quickly than other parts of the world. So that's kind of what I do, really.
I was going to say the UK immigration just tweeted about this. They would be like, "What did he say?"
Let's not go there. That's politically what's happening in the UK, but
yeah, that's right. Well, and on that high, I want to get into the last section, which is a fun question. It's basically they're non-technical questions, and as I go through them, they're not that many as well. Just a couple of questions, actually 2-3 questions. What do you spend most time on when you're not working in security?
I've got two little kids, so mainly being run ragged by a toddler. You'll see behind me, I've got a drum kit and guitars and things. If I find time, I love music. I love going to gigs.
And you were a DJ as well, right?
I used to DJ. Yeah, I used to DJ a bit. I used to travel a bit and make records.
So do you still take the deck out sometimes when you get time?
No, they're firmly tucked away for another day.
Cool.
So that's kind of. It's hard to find the time, actually. The day job as well. Like, we invest a lot of time in security, don't we? And in kind of reading and trying to keep on top of things. So that tends to keep me busy.
And cloud especially keeps us really busy when AWS releases 200 updates every event. And you're like,
every reinvent. Yeah,
that's right. The next question is, what is something that you're proud of, but is not on your socials, like LinkedIn or Twitter?
What am I proud of?
Could be anything. Could be like a good party trick, or could be something. It doesn't have to be professional.
I'm going to be really boring and say my family, actually.
That's not boring.
I've had two little children, and they're awesome. And I suppose my career has been a big focus over the last few years. Not just, family obviously is number one, but I'm proud of how I've shaped my career, and love doing the community work and being part of that. It's a big effort, and it takes a lot of personal time to do that. But I'm really proud of what that's become, and I hope it's helped. I hope if I've ever helped somebody connect with somebody and get a job, or the community thing helps people upskill, that I'm super proud of that. What else? That's all I can think of, really.
That's a good one, though, because I've
been very lucky. The music thing that I used to do, I loved that, and I traveled, and I got the chance to go to places that I never thought I would go to, and made records and.
Wait, you had a single out as well?
I had tracks played on Radio 1 and over
what?
Here in the UK.
Well, that should have been your unicorn segment.
Yeah, it's just another time, that I quit when I was 30. So, I had 13 years of working in that industry and
right.
And having a hell of a lot of fun. And I look back at it now, and I did some cool things, and I had a lot of fun. But it's funny how life kind of moves on in stages.
Yeah,
sometimes.
I think it's different stages of your life as a journey, I guess.
Yeah, I'm very boring these days.
No, no, no. I don't think it's boring, but I kind of enjoy that part about knowing you a bit more. The final question is probably getting even more personal. What's your favorite cuisine or a restaurant that you go to?
Cuisine, definitely. I am a curry person, so the one bit I miss about not living in London anymore is it's some of the best food I've ever had has been in London. My two favorite curry houses are in London,
Really?
Tayyab's and Lahore Kebab House for anybody who lives in the UK.
Oh, nice.
And Dishoom is an awesome place in the UK that
Oh,
does.
yeah, I've been there.
It's like a sort of Bombay cafe, and
Yeah,
Mexican after that. There's some great Mexican places in the UK. So yeah, Indian, Pakistani food first, Mexican second. Yeah,
nice.
they're
Well,
my go-to food outlets.
like after that, you go to potatoes, I guess.
Yeah, or haggis. Or so
Cool.
normal
Cool.
British food, boring,
No,
bland.
no, no, no. You can always add a bit of pepper or sauce spice into it.
Yeah,
No, dude, it's been really awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time out.
not at all.
Where can people find you online, just quickly?
Yeah, so at Stu Hirst Infosec on Twitter, and I'm on LinkedIn. I'm always happy to connect with people on LinkedIn. I try and blog a little bit and put a few things out there. That's probably the two best places to
Sweet.
get me, really.
Sweet. Oh, dude, thanks again so much. I really appreciate that you took out the time for this.
No worries.
I'm
It's been
sure
great to
for other
speak.
people who got an insight as well. And I can't wait to, I guess, share a lot more when we meet in person, hopefully one day at one of the
Yeah, no,
conferences,
definitely.
or if I visit Scotland one day. But
Yeah, please
thanks so
do.
much again for your time, man. Really appreciate that.
Awesome. Great to speak.
Get to speak as well.